welcome to our next video, which is on estimation. Okay, now this very often appears, in fact I would almost go to say that it appears every single year. Estimation appears in normally the non-calculator paper, okay, so it's non-calculator so that it forces you to estimate, and if you don't estimate you lose marks. Okay, so whenever a question says estimate, unless it's talking about probability, okay, and then it means something different, or if it's talking about the mean from a table or anything like that, if it's not one of those and it says estimate, what it means is it wants you to round everything to one significant figure, okay? And once you round everything to one significant figure, that then gives you a rough calculation for the answer, okay? That is what you need to do. You need to round everything to one significant figure at the beginning. Alright? Now just be aware that sometimes they will ask you to estimate, sometimes they will ask you to approximate. They mean the same thing. They are synonyms of each other. Alright? So you can either estimate or approximate means round everything to one significant figure. So let's look at some examples. Here we go. We're going to estimate 58 times 324.9. Now, if you are not sure how to round to one significant figure, you need to go back and look at the significant figure video, and you need to practice that if you're still unsure. Okay, this is like the next step. This is the creme de la creme of rounding to significant figures. So, we are first of all going to round these to significant figures. Here's my first significant figure. The number next door is not 5 or more, so that goes to 60. Here's my first significant figure. The number next door is not 5 or more, so 324.9 goes to 300. Okay? You have already got a mark from just rounding to one significant figure. Okay? Then all you need to do is do the calculation. So 6 times 3 is 18, add 1, 2, 3 zeros. The answer, 18,000. Okay? Now if you worked out what that was exactly, 58 times 324.9, it would be somewhere around where we are. There you go, 18,844.2. 18,000 is a good estimation. Okay? Right, question 2. 62 times 432 divided by 218. So our first step, round everything to one significant figure. Here's our first significant figure. Number next door is not 5 or more, so that is 60. 432 rounds to 400. 2.18 rounds to 2. Then we do the calculations. 6 times 4 is 24, add 1, 2, 3 zeros, divided by 2. 24,000 divided by 2, you can do it in a bus stop if necessary, but 24,000, hopefully everybody can half in their heads, is 12,000. Okay? Right, then we're going to number 3, slightly trickier. Same process though. Round everything to one significant figure at the beginning. So, 5 is the first significant figure. The number next door is not 5 or more, so that stays as a 5, and we've got to square it. Plus, the square root has to stay there, 99.1. The 9 is the first significant figure. The 9 next door is 5 or more, so that bumps that, so that will become 100. Okay? And on the bottom, that 0 does not count as a significant figure, so the first significant figure is this 1. The number next door is not 5 or more, so that stays as 0.1. Don't change that to a 1, it's 0.1. Okay? Then we've got to work it out. So, 5 squared is 25. The square root of 100 is 10, and we'll leave that as 0.1 on the bottom. 25 plus 10 is 35, and we've got to divide by 0.1. Now, there is a video on my YouTube channel on dividing by a decimal, okay, which you're welcome to check out if you'd like to, but the tricky thing about this is that we've got a decimal on the bottom. So the easiest thing to do is to get rid of the decimal on the bottom. What could I times 0.1 by to get rid of the decimal? Well, I could times it by 10, because then it would just be 1 on the bottom. And if I've times the bottom by 10, I then need to times the top by 10, so that becomes 350. 350 divided by 1 is 350. Okay, so my approximation to this is 350. Okay, right. We're then going to just go slightly off piece. You remember at the beginning of this video, I said that when it asks you to estimate, it wants you to round everything to one significant figure. Now that is true almost all of the time, okay? However, if it then doesn't really work, you don't have to round to one significant figure, okay? Now that's quite tricky for me to say because obviously you like a rule that works every single time, okay? And I would say 90% of the time we round everything to one significant figure. However, if we had this sort of question, we might choose not to. So it's asking us to estimate the square root of 81.3 times 99.7. Now, the key thing here is that we need to know a little bit about square roots because we're not in a calculator paper here, we're in a non-calculator paper. So, let's just look at this 99.7. If we round that to one significant figure, as always, that would be 100. So that's happy days, we can round that. Now if we rounded this to one significant figure, this 81.3, it would be 80. 80 times 100. And then we'd be doing the square root of 8,000. Okay? Now that's quite tricky because there isn't a number that times by itself to give you 80 or indeed 8,000. If, however, we kept that as 81, when we times them together, we'd get 8,100. Okay? And the square root of 8,100, well, the square root of 81 is 9, and the square root of 100 is 10. So the square root of 8,100 is 90. So that only works if we rounded this to two significant figures. Okay? Now, alternatively, you could round it to one significant figure if you liked, and then sort of fudged it at the end. So you'd end up with 80 times 100, which is the square root of 8,000. And you'd say, okay, well, 80 is close to 81, and we know the square of 81 is 9, so that is roughly 90. Okay? Whichever process you did would work. You just need to kind of use your brain and your knowledge of square roots. Okay? Similarly here, we're doing the cube root of 26.94. Well, if I rounded that to one significant figure, I'd be doing the cube root of 30. Now there obviously is a cube root of 30, but it's decimals, a cube root of 30. However, we could round it to two significant figures and do the cube root of 27. And the cube root of 27, something that times is by itself, and then again, to give you 27, is 3. Because 3 times 3 is 9, times 3 is 27. Okay, so these ones are a special case. Don't get too heads up on them, they are just a special case. Okay? Okay, right, example number 3 is where we have worded estimation. Alright, now, you just need to make sure you read everything carefully, and here we're going back to, yes, you have to round everything to one significant figure at the beginning. So, Susan buys 63 boxes of crisps. Each box contains 48 packets of crisps. On average, each pack has 77 crisps. Estimate how many crisps Susan has in total. Okay, so first of all, we're going to take each number and we are going to round to one significant figure. So 63 is obviously 60, 48 is 50, and 77 is 80. She has 63 boxes of crisps and each box contains 48 packets. So we're going to do 60 times 50. 6 times 5 is 30, add 1, 2 zeros. So far she's got 3,000. And then each pack contains 77 crisps. So this is how many packs we have. Okay, and then we're going to times that by 80 to work out how many crisps she has. So 3 times 8 is 24, add 1, 2, 3, 4 zeros. Okay, so that is 240,000 crisps. Alright, okay, last example is going to be the worst one you'll ever get. Alright, but saying that, they put it in a couple of times, and so if they put it in a couple of times, that might mean it might come up again, okay? Right, a plane travels at 208 miles per hour. Estimate how many seconds it takes to travel 1 mile. We've got to estimate, Okay, well the only number we've been given is 208 miles per hour. So let's round that to start with. So 208 miles per hour to one significant figure is 200 miles per hour. Now people get really confused with speed, okay, and they start doing all these triangle things and making it really complicated. It's not. All 200 miles per hour means that if we drove for 1 hour, we'd have driven 200 miles. 200 miles per hour. In 1 hour, you drive 200 miles. Okay? Now, the question's asking us to talk about seconds. And quite obviously we're going to have to talk about seconds, because if we're doing 200 miles in 1 hour, it's only going to take us a matter of seconds to travel 1 mile. So let's make this into seconds here. So if we travel for an hour, that is the same as travelling for 60 minutes. 60 minutes is the same as an hour. So if we're going 200 miles an hour, we're also going 200 miles in 60 minutes. Means the same thing. How many seconds are in a minute? 60. So to get how many seconds are in an hour, we do this times 60. So 200 miles is also being travelled in 60 times 60, 3,600 seconds. That's how many seconds are in an hour, 3,600. Okay? We want to know how long it is taking us to travel 1 mile. So I want to know how long it takes for me to do 1 mile. Well, to go from 200 to 1, I'm going to divide by 200. So I've got to do the same over here, divide by 200. Now I like to write that as a fraction because then it makes it much easier. 3,600 divided by 200. It makes it much easier because we can get rid of the zeros that match, and then we're left with 36 divided by 2, which is 18. How long does it estimate how long it takes to travel 1 mile? It takes 18 seconds.